And away we go.
You're listening to Live on Four Legs, the live Pearl Jam podcast experience, featuring
Mr. Stone Gossard. Fucking Cameron in the truck. Mr. Boom Gasper. You can call me Al, you can call me Ed, you just fucking call me, why don't you?
Hello everyone, welcome to Live on Four Legs, the live Pearl Jam podcast experience. For everybody that's been listening for a long time, you know the deal. We cover a Pearl Jam show every single episode. We do a new one, new era, and we try to tap into what's good about the set list and what might not work, what sounds really good in the songs. And if you're new to the show, that's really what we got for you. For all you Pearl Jam fans out there, which I hope you all are, because it wouldn't make sense if you weren't, if you are listening to this show. That is, we combine our love for the band and our passion for music to give you this all-encompassing podcast featuring us just kind of going off on some tangents sometimes and enjoying this band and sharing our love with you. Unfortunately today, I think we announced last week that this is not a Matt show. That's 3 out of 4 weeks that we don't have Matt on the show, and we apologize for that. But again, this is such a busy time of the year for him. Really, I want everybody to message him or email him. He is one of the hardest working people in show business right now. He, although he's not doing the show with us, he still is committed to editing it. And, we're doing our part to get it to him in a timely fashion and getting it, within a couple of hours, not the 3-hour mega show that we seem to have every time we have a guest on. But we're going to keep this one a little shorter because it is an earlier show. So, so no Matt this week. Hopefully we'll be back with him next week. We should be, but who knows how that's going to all turn out. And just to get this out of the way now, for anybody that wants to send us an idea for a show or wants to just get in touch with us, we're at liveonfourlegspodcast@gmail.com. You can also find us on Instagram. Our Instagram has been booming lately. I've taken over the Instagram. It's not that, again, Matt's been so busy that, I stepped in, and that's something I had to do, and our Instagram has been booming lately. It's been great, and I really appreciate the participation on the Instagram. Our Facebook is always good. We always have good participation there. Check it both out if you're on social media. I suggest those two outlets. Twitter, not as much. We're just kind of rehashing stuff on Twitter. So Instagram and Facebook, Live on Four Legs Podcast, you'll be able to find us there. For Patreon people, if you want to sign up for our Patreon and subscribe, head on over to patreon.com/liveonfourlegs, and we will continue to do exclusive episodes. We'll do some more stuff as time goes on. I know, again, this is going to be a very busy summer. If we get things in late, if we miss a week, it might happen. We apologize ahead of time, but that's why we have, and I'll kind of make this announcement at the end here, we'll have kind of a cool thing that we're going to do this summer that I know I've at least teased before, but we'll do the full announcement at the end of the show, and that'll sort of tie into us trying to figure out a way to make these shows a little bit shorter. And now, without further ado, I introduce to the podcast he is a past guest of the podcast. It has been months since he has been on, and we have had plans to have him on, and unfortunately those plans couldn't come into fruition a couple weeks ago, as we wanted to do the Temple of the Dog show, but that's when Matt was not able to do an episode that week, so we kind of missed it. We have returning to the podcast. It is the OG Live on Four Legs fan, Chris Buckley.
What's going on?
Nothing, dude. It is good to have you back.
It is great to be back. Thank you, as always, for allowing me to come back. It was a blast when we did Brooklyn 2013 Night 2 a couple months ago, and, we're turning back the clock this week. Let's do it.
That is still one of my favorite inside jokes on this podcast. Is leaving here and I crack up every time I think about it. It was just,
it's too funny, man. Too funny.
It goes in the highlight reel of things that we've done on this show for sure.
Absolutely. And if you don't know what we're talking about, I highly recommend that you go back and just listen to the first half of Leaving Here. Let's just say Eddie kind of, vocal vomit, essentially word vomit, and doesn't really get the line out the way that it's actually sung, and it comes out, like I said, like vomit, and it's very entertaining. It's very funny, so I would go back and listen.
The whole thing was inaudible. He saw a shirt in the crowd, and he was like,
right.
leaving here. Wait, how do I play it again?
Right,
come
right.
on.
And he has to restart like 3 times, and kind of, I think Stone's like showing him how to play the little riff there and the chords and everything. So, but yeah, that's a good one.
It's in our archive, episode 7. Yes, I remember these things.
Yes.
Even if you just want to scroll to the end where you just hear the Easter egg, that's good enough. You'll be able to know exactly what we're talking about there.
Absolutely.
So today, sir, we are doing Zurich. 1992, Switzerland. It's quite a neutral show, I suppose.
Yeah, definitely. You guys, I notice, it's not often that you're going to go this far back. I think a lot of it does have to do with the fact that it is so early in their career, so there's obviously less songs for them, not just for them to choose, but for, from your perspective, from Matt's perspective, from a podcast perspective, it's a different situation because you're really, looking at a phase of the band where there's not a lot of choice. A lot of the set lists look very similar, they're almost the same, and, they're really playing just 10 and early versions of some songs off of Verses, and, their typical Baba and Rockin' in the Free World covers and stuff. And, it's just a very early phase of their career. And this show, as we go through it, is a prime example of a good set for that era with a couple little quirky, weird things thrown in here and there. And, we'll get into that obviously, but, it's not the first time in that year that they were actually in Switzerland.
No.
And I know you want to touch on that with the acoustic show from the Albany Bar of Music, and
yeah,
according to their website, the Pearl Jam's website, it says that the location was Winterthur, Switzerland.
I'm sure.
So
yeah, Winter
in the same vicinity, Winterthur, whatever it is, on Wednesday, February 19th of 1992. The show we're going to talk about today is from June 18th of 1992, so a few months later. An interesting little tidbit here, Randy, as I'm looking on the website. There is no set list listed for that show.
So that's something that we definitely have to talk about because Pearl Jam's website doesn't have a set list. Live Footsteps doesn't have a set list for this. The Stat Tracker doesn't have a set list. However, there are some things that we do know about this.
Garden was definitely played.
Garden was played. Jeremy was played. Porch was played. That's what we know for sure, and that's what we know from the PJ20 documentary.
Right.
What is on Setlist FM right now is a completely different story. There's even a note there that they were doing a sound check with Once, which I don't know where this information has come from. I don't know if it's been confirmed, and that's why Setlist FM is really low on my radar when looking at these things, because fans can just kind of put in whatever they want. And yeah, it's accurate if it's a modern day show because you have so many sources and so many people that were there, and the internet is available to everybody. But this is Switzerland, 1992, and we don't know, there aren't a lot of people out there. This is a small show. I believe probably, like 500 to 1,000 fans, something really, really tiny. There's no statistic on how many people were in attendance at this, but this was not the biggest of shows for sure. And it's kind of, there's definitely no Americans at this show at this point, I wouldn't think. And unless there is like a hardcore Swiss fan base, which I'm not even sure of, probably whatever you see on last Setlist FM is probably not accurate. And that's just in my eyes. Other people can believe what they want, but how are you able to get that source? How are you able to back it up? That's all I'm trying to say.
Well, I'm looking at the Wikipedia page right now and we're talking about the June show, right? Correct? We're talking about.
I was talking about the acoustic show.
Okay,
I was still talking about that.
Well, if you look in PJ20 in the actual movie, the documentary movie, they show the video of Garden being played.
It's Garden and Jeremy and Porch back to back, and there's maybe like 10 seconds of each. And you see how small the stage is, and
I mean, Dave Abraziz could barely sit on the stage with his drum set.
Crammed,
it's that small.
Jeff is sitting Indian style right next to Stone. They're snug up right against each other.
Exactly.
And just for a little background, because I know most people that have seen PJ20 know the story, but I feel like it bears repeating because it leads to bigger things, not just with what's in this episode, but what's with the career of Pearl Jam, what happened later that year. They show up to the stage in Switzerland in Winterthur, and I have to say it like that. It's not even Swiss. It's more Swedish, but I still have to say it like that. And they show up, and the stage is like, it's like the size of a downstairs bathroom or something like that. It's tight. It's really small, and they can't fit all their gear on the stage. So they happen to have some of their, I guess somebody from the record company was there and was able to call a bunch of people, see if they can get some acoustic equipment, and they brought in an acoustic bass and a couple acoustic guitars, and they were able to do an acoustic set that night. And you see the crowd. The crowd is small. It's probably about 300 people max, you would think.
Oh, yeah. It's definitely not more than a few hundred. And it's the way I look at it is, you're looking at a point in time for them where the energy is, and this is a common theme with the show that we'll be talking about today, but just in general in their career at that point, the energy level of these shows is off the charts. So
absolutely,
for them to sit there and play an acoustic show for the first time like that it really isn't that common for them at all. In the big picture, that they're not, besides Unplugged and Ben Arroyo, or these days, I guess if they come out for like the first encore, second encore, play a couple acoustic songs or whatever it is, and at this point in time, it's just so uncharacteristic for them, but it shows you how dynamic they are, that they were able to adapt to that situation and, put on a good show. And, Eddie's basically just sitting there. I don't even think he has a mic in his hand if you look at the video. Doesn't he not even have a microphone?
I thought
Isn't he just singing, or at some point maybe he takes it away? If you look at some of these old YouTube videos, right, when they were first touring for 10 and 91, and they stop at all these record stores, like Tower Records here.
Oh, yeah.
You see them playing acoustic sets before their show later in that day. So I know there's one from like Rockville, Maryland. I think there's a record store in Yonkers, here in New York, that they did something at. And, it's just so interesting to me to see them do that. That's so different than what you get later that night at the full show. And I think it's just really is just a testament to, like I said, how dynamic they are and just how talented they are, to be able to go and be able to play acoustically. Because some bands, you're so adjusted and conditioned to listening to them, full electronic, electric guitars, everything, the whole nine, to then unplug and really try to change up the entire vibe of the songs that they're playing. It translates both ways for them. And I love that. I think that's again, it's just good songwriting. It's talented musicians, and that's why they're such a good band. That's why we love them.
It's versatility, absolutely, and it absolutely speaks to how talented they are, and kind of the band that they're going to become. It's like you said, like Benaroya and the Gorge, the first set of the Gorge back in 2005, where they did,
or even massive... At Red Rocks too in '95.
Sure.
I think they did the same thing.
Yeah, and it shows that they don't want to be typecast as this teenage grunge band. The angst and they wanted to find a way to separate themselves from the other Seattle bands who weren't really doing this. Really before Unplugged, Nirvana didn't really do stuff like this. They were, everything was just angst and anger. Alice in Chains really wasn't doing stuff like this. Soundgarden really wasn't doing much like this at that point. But they wanted to separate themselves from the pack, and this was the kind of thing that did. And, whether or not it was the grunge thing to do, or the thing that the grunge fan, and I use the quotation marks there because, to a lot of people, grunge is a dirty word, it separated them from that pack, and it made them seem like they were a full band that cared more about the music than cared about the scene, cared about the industry, and cared about the identity that they were possessing. They cared first and foremost about what kind of music they wanted to put out there and what they wanted people to listen to. And that sort of it's cool that that's kind of how it started in Switzerland, and then later in 1992 you have the Unplugged show, and that's obviously one of the most famous Pearl Jam performances of all time. I would have to say it's easily top 5.
Yeah, oh, absolutely.
We did our tournament thing back in March, and that version of Black was the by far the winner of the tournament. So how much that song means to people.
Everybody loves that version.
Of course. You have
Absolutely.
Eddie writing pro-choice on his arm. Everything is, it's it all was just a fantastic performance. And that, again, it just leads into great things that this band can do later on. And before we get into breaking down the set list and talking about the songs here, I just kind of there is an important thing about this set, and the reason that why we are doing it, and the reason why is because this isn't the first time they did the Mamasan Trio, the trilogy altogether. This is actually, so they did a show in Milan the night before, and then this show was really the first time that Ed really ever explained anything. Right. And we'll get to all that in a second. I just kind of wanted to, for people that, aren't necessarily tapped in, and it's something that I think the most basic of Pearl Jam fan would probably pretty much understand, but I feel like for anybody that doesn't, I just don't want to leave them out of the dark. Let's kind of talk about...
it's worth clarifying it. Yeah.
Exactly. Let's just kind of talk about what the Mamasan meant. It's such a huge, pivotal story in the band's legacy that I think if we just kind of said, oh, they did the Mamasan, it really doesn't do it justice. So obviously, Ed, this is after Mother Love Bone, and Stone and Jeff are still trying to put something together after the tragedy of Andy Wood, and they get a demo tape into the hands of Jack Irons, and Jack Irons gives it to one Eddie Vedder, who went surfing one day, and after listening to it, and then got some ideas, and came up with lyrics for Alive, Once, and Footsteps. And it sort of all ties in together. You have the story of Alive, everybody pretty much knows that. His mom telling him who you thought your father was is not your actual father, and then you kind of feel the spiral, the sarcastic, well, we're all still alive, well, do I deserve to be, that whole part, and then you gotta get into Once, and you get the idea that Once is this character, the same character in Alive, who is still reeling from the fact that he lived half his life a lie, that he didn't know the truth about who he was or what his upbringing was, and it kind of made him go insane. It turned him into a serial killer, and Footsteps is kind of the end of that, him in a jail cell and him again saying he sort of blamed his mom for everything. So, like, how do you see everything in that perspective of just how important this is to the band and how these all tie in together?
Well, I think the most important thing is, and you touched on it when you first started talking about this, is this was really the start of everything.
Yeah.
This tape, that Eddie gets through Jack Irons and Stone and Jeff, and it really is the foundation of the band. So you really can't stress enough, I don't think, how crucial this trio of songs is. I think, the fact that it's partially biographical for Eddie, to a certain degree. I mean, it's definitely, obviously not totally, completely all about him, but, the part of the, the son and the mother, is kind of serves as a starting off point, from his own life to create this little mini opera, so to speak, of Mamasan, which interestingly is not S-O-N, it's M-A-M-A-S-A-N.
I always spell it wrong, so
it's Mamasan. It's like it's not Mamasan, it's Mamasan.
Mamasan, yeah.
Everyone always says Mamasan. Right.
But I spell it Mamasan.
Exactly. So I think just as far as right from the start, these are the first three songs that Eddie writes lyrics for the band right out of the gate. To have the type of lyrics, just, to tell this kind of story, is eye-opening. I think it's part of what makes him so great of a songwriter. I mean, he writes the best lyrics, you'll ever read. This was part of what launched them into fame. I mean, Alive is obviously one of the anthems. I mean, all time, not just 90s or Pearl Jam anthems, just music anthems in general.
Yeah.
It really is that big of a song. And like I said, I think for him for this to be his first contribution to the band, and getting this from a tape, and you listen back to, actually, like, there is a way, I've heard it before, like, you can listen to his very first recordings, like it's the actual Mamasan demo.
Yes, yeah.
It is available. It is online. I've listened to it before.
YouTube.
And I don't remember even when or the last time I listened to it, but I have listened to it in the past, and it's just so raw. And I that's a word that I think comes to mind a lot when you think about the band when they first started in 90, 91, 92, even into the the mid 90s. But really, these first few formative years, you listen to his singing. I mean, he sounds a little timid. Like he's still trying to kind of get a feel for the melody and the lyrics. Some of the words are different. In the early recording,
well, if you hear once, it's completely, like, the verses are him just rambling. It's kind of incoherent.
So it really was he's like sketching it out almost, like he's practicing how he actually wants to make the recording sound by the time it's all done. But yeah, I think when you look back and you see that there, he opens up and explains to this crowd, and he I think he even says, do you speak English? Like, do you understand if I talk in English? Like, because he wants to actually explain what the trio of songs is, which, and I don't even think we really said it. I mean, obviously if you're a big fan, but Alive is the incestuous relationship between the mother, and the son, who resembles the biological father, and obviously that part is true for Eddie, in that he grows up thinking that the man he thinks is his father is actually his stepfather. And then Once is about the man going on a killing spree, which clearly is not accurate to Eddie's life, as far as we know, thank God. And Footsteps is the culmination in the man is caught and sitting in a jail cell and awaiting to be executed, or, to go to the chair, whatever it is. So it really is it's an emotional roller coaster, obviously. And I think it's the kind of subject matter where it's a little extreme, but I think it fits the mold of 90s grunge music, you know, that dark kind of somewhat twisted storytelling and lyricism and just overall vibe, you know, from the music. I mean, Once is it's a dirty song.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like, it's just like especially these early versions, man. Like, you listen to it and it's just Eddie's energy, man, in these early shows is just unbelievable. And I think what really, really drives it home, if you look up the videos of these old shows on YouTube, just to get a visualization of what is actually going on here, it's incredible. You know, to see them jumping around and going crazy. And I mean, you know, for guys that are now in their mid-50s, they're still I think they're pretty mobile on stage, but nothing, I mean, in comparison to, you know, 91, 92 era Pearl Jam. It's just unbelievable.
Yeah,
I mean, just off the charts energy, and Eddie just leading the way, obviously. But to you know, wrap up the whole Mamasan thing here. Yes, it's awesome that he goes into explaining it, and B, it's just to be able to look back and in the early going, just see that they actually were playing it, you know, 3 in a row, the way that it's intended to be listened to, the way that Eddie wrote it. That's even cooler. You know, it's just such a cool little historical factoid for the band. So it's definitely one of the standout moments, clearly in this bootleg for sure.
And we'll get to all that. We'll obviously talk about the songs, and we'll kind of, as we go along through those songs, continue to talk about the Mamasan as well. So let's kick this off. Zurich 92 here. Ed comes out on stage, and he says they're happy to be here. Do you remember the last time we were here? It was small. We took the plugs out of our instruments and played it quietly. 1, 2, 3... And Matt loves this song, so I'm going to make him edit it in so we can hear the open. And for anybody that's been listening to the show a while, I think you know exactly what's about to come.
1, 2, 3. Hold on to the throne. The close you shall like me to. Dream of the next time we
kicks off the show, Oceans, and Release. It kind of feels like, you know, depending on the show, it's either Oceans or Release that's opening up during this time, and whether or not they want to kick it off with a bang. If they do end up doing that, it's usually Even Flow that opens the show, maybe sometimes once. But I think during this version of Oceans, I don't know, I was feeling some kind of strain in Ed's voice.
A little bit. His voice cracks, I think, at one point, toward, you know, one of the falsetto, the parts,
right,
in the, I guess that's the chorus, I guess, technically.
It's something, yeah.
The song is organized in a very interesting way, but, I think just in general about this whole show, and we were talking about this a little bit before, I think it's a little clunky. It's a little, I'm trying to think of the right way to describe it. Like they're warming up, so to speak. You know, they need a little time to really kick it into high gear.
Right.
And one I don't know why, maybe it's just because I listen to this bootleg a lot, or it just stands out in my mind, but that Oceans Even Flow combo to start, it's exactly the same as the Orpheum Theater show.
Yeah, you're absolutely right.
Which you know is completely unrelated, but I think just the dynamic of the two songs, you know, to go from Oceans and its calming, you know, soothing kind of, you know, happy sounding song, to then complete 180, in the 2-hole even flow, just exploding. Once
you get from Oceans and it transitions into that wow, and they go right into even flow, it's just kind of like you can feel that the crowd is about to erupt and explode. And like that's one of the best things about a 1992 through 1995 even flow is that it's going to come early in the set, and it's not going to be this kind of mid-set, again, don't like to use the word piss break, but for some of you it is, because I know you've seen it 50 times before. But Mike is about to kick your ass on it, so sit down and enjoy it. That's how I feel about it. But this feels even flow. I got nothing else on Oceans. I think that was pretty simply put. If you have anything else now.
I would just make one point, not so much about Oceans, but just this little combo that we're talking about here. I think one thing that really stands out to me about not just this show, but all of these early shows, and I said this to you earlier, it's the tempo at which they play the songs.
That was going to be my first thing coming into Even Flow.
Right.
Was
so
that
and it's a great jumping off point. It's a great jumping off point with Even Flow to use as an example because it's like you just said, now it's become a pee break song. People hear it a million times. They're tired of it. To me, I would go to the bathroom now and I would try to get back in time to hear Mike's solo.
Sure.
Now, if you go back and you listen to these early versions, there are no extended solos. They keep it relatively tight. Versions of Even Flow now can go 9, 10, 11 minutes long, depending on how long they let Mike solo. These early versions, Dave A's drumming is just, as always, killer. I mean, you put whatever happened between him and the rest of the band aside, Eddie and Jeff, whatever, not getting along with them, I take that out. I try not to even think about that because he is such an incredible drummer. And listen, I love Matt Cameron. I do. I love him.
Dave is such a good live drummer.
I enjoy Jack Irons' drumming, especially on No Code. I mean, he's awesome. No one is Dave A. That's to me. That's my opinion.
Yeah, I've been kind of Team Matt for such a long time, and it's really hard for me to kind of go 1, 2, 3 and say who's where, and even Cruison's very underrated.
Sure.
But the more that I hear Dave A live in these shows, the more impressed I am because it's so stand out, and while Jack is a little bit more groovy and he has every now and again he has a little punch to it, and Matt is just kind of like. You almost sometimes don't even know Matt is there because he's blending in so perfectly, and that's just his style. They're 3 completely different styles, and it's really, if you love just the rock and roll, just, coming out of the gates, guns blazing kind of style, that's Dave A. is that. That's what you want out of Dave A. I know they call Matt the Lamborghini, the Ferrari all the time, and he is. Trust me, he is. But man, Dave A. You hear him on songs, and we'll get to a song later that I feel like is a very much a strong point for him that I was disappointed on in this show. But this is kind of the reason why we've talked about a lot on the show why you don't get versions of WMA because. Dave A is what made WMA so good with that drum beat in the beginning, and even stuff like little things like Go and Animal too, that you can really tell that there's a difference between all of the drummers on those songs. But man, Even Flow in the second spot, that's really for me it's riling up the crowd. And it's really getting things going because this is again not only is the song different and there's more of a groove and it feels more of like the album, the radio hit. The crowd is there to party. They're there to have, and it's not like I don't want this to be a disservice to crowds now, but you know what the Pearl Jam crowd is from back then. They're mosh pitting, they are crowd surfing, they are stage diving, they're doing everything insane and crazy, and even to a point where Ed does say in this show that people have to start being careful because they're going a little bit too nuts. So at the time, Even Flow was their hit song. I believe it was, I'm going to say it was probably in heavy rotation at the time on the radio at this point. So to kick this off and really get this as the first one that knocks you into the set, that's gotta really set the fire under the fans over here in Switzerland.
Absolutely. That's their song at this point. Everybody wants to hear that song. It's that's the main hit at the time, I think, was Even Flow. Everybody wants to go crazy, and it's the perfect song. Like, as we said, that 1-2 punch, you start them off slow and then you really punch them right in the face and get everybody going crazy with the second song. And just one more quick point about the drumming. I think we're talking about Dave A and Jack Irons and then Mac Cameron, obviously. It's like the three different eras of the band. I really think like you can break their sound into those three eras by the drummers. And I have to say, I mean, like I said, I just love Dave's drumming. I think it's just like he's a machine. Like Mac Cameron is a machine. He is, but he's a machine in the sense that he has great endurance. He can just play forever and ever and ever. I feel like with a lot of the older songs that Dave A or Jack Irons were the original drummers for, you lose that groove that you talked about. You do. And I'm not trying to knock Matt Cameron. Like I said, I mean, we're all fans of him. We all love him, and he's an amazing drummer. But, it kind of gets lost, when you have these older songs, when you hear him play it. If you go back and you listen to these older shows, these older boots, you just hear it, from Dave A, and there's that groove there.
I think the best way for me to put it is that Cameron is a very cymbal heavy guy and Dave is a very tom heavy guy. And when you have that distinct sound where the tom is more prominent, then there are little things that you pick up on that just sound really, really unique. Coming from his drumming style, and that's
and you lose. It's those little things, those little details that make these early shows. That's why I love them so much, because you can hear it in real time, the way that they're supposed to be played, and they're not just trying to rush through the songs to get and squeeze 35 songs into a set.
Right
now, listen. I'm not saying that. All these versions of these songs now are bad by any means. But it's just great to, I'm not trying to say that I don't appreciate them trying to play more songs now, because I think in the big picture, it's still, you're not going to complain when you leave a show and they play 35 songs, obviously. But I would take them playing a few less songs if they would slow them down. You know what I'm saying? Like, sure. I'll take slower versions of Even Flow, slower versions of State, whatever it is, just for them to be able to play them the way that they're supposed to be played. So that's why these early versions of Even Flow, it's like you really get the full scope of the drumming. You get the full, experience of the way that it's supposed to sound, and it's not a rush, it's so fast
right
now. And I love that they slow it down. They're playing it the way it's supposed to be played. That's what I'm saying. So
this is an OG type show, and they're really, this is wheelhouse if that's what you love, or if you're stuck on stuff that, from recent times and recent shows that you've been to and you're not used to stuff from 90, 92, 93, 94, go back and just listen to how much different it is, and you'll just be astounded, and it's evolution, baby. That's really what it is. It's the evolution of the band. So although it is still good now, it can be appreciated.
Exactly.
The good stuff from back then. So
right.
Continuing on in the set list here, the next three are Why Go, Jeremy, and State of Love and Trust. And we'll start off with Why Go. And it's funny because there are things that do remain in these songs. While Even Flow doesn't still have that groove, some things never change, and one of those things is just that hey in the beginning, and that's here in Why Go, and Ed is going all out as much as he can in this, but it's not. I don't know. It seems like he's not 100%. He doesn't seem to be bothered by it at all. It just doesn't feel like I've seen more fierce screams and more fierce attitude from him at shows out of this era. And, you know, I wasn't expecting... I was expecting a little more coming out of a 1992 show, because you know that you see things like Pinkpop, you see things like Den Haag and Indio and things that are really, you know, setting the tone for the time. You know, he's not holding anything back, but I think, you know, obviously, 1992, they were touring every single month. There's got to be some labor to it, so...
Absolutely.
That's just labor was kind of how I felt on the song. It was a little labored.
Yeah, he definitely has some strain early on in this show. As we go along, I and just listening back to the bootleg, I actually think his voice actually gets better as the show goes on.
I agree with that.
It's like he needed a little time to warm up and get into it.
Who knows if they did a sound check? Who knows?
Right. And I mean, you're talking to someone who's I would say my top three in my Blood is probably my top three Pearl Jam song, you know, favorite Pearl Jam songs. So if that doesn't tell you that I love angry, screaming, screeching Eddie, you know, I don't know what does, because that is obviously the prime example of a song that it could be described in that way. So I am always looking for, when I listen to especially these old bootlegs, and it's obviously more common given that it's earlier in their career and his voice was, you know, he's younger, he's able to scream more. So you get a lot of those screams in these early shows. And you're right, it is a little, it's lacking in the first few songs out of the gate. It gets better as it goes. I mean, you look toward the end of the set, there's a couple songs where, moments in the songs that we'll get to where, if you know the songs, obviously, you know he really belts it. You know, he really is letting it loose and screaming as loud as he can. There are moments in these early songs, like you said, where that is a little off, or he doesn't take that, you know, that risk of trying to make a higher scream than he normally would. So it's not, and again, it's not to say that it's bad. They're not bad performances. They're just, as you said, they're not, maybe the best examples from this era of performances of these songs, but they're still good, nonetheless. And just, it kind of leads me into, as we look at Wygo and Jeremy here, two obviously very, very bass-heavy songs.
Yes.
So prominently involving Jeff Ament, obviously on the bass, and in this particular mix of this bootleg, you really, and I said this to you before, you really, really get the presence of Jeff in these songs. The bass in the mix of this bootleg, and I don't know if this is intentional, if it's just the equipment that was used, if it was done after the fact, I don't really know. Whatever it is, you can hear the bass loud and clear the entire time, and it's awesome. It's really, really cool, because as you go later in their career, I feel like there's a good number of bootleg recordings that you listen to them, and the bass is a little hard to hear. I feel like the bass gets drowned out a lot of times.
Yeah, I fully agree with that, to the point where I've heard versions of Do the Evolution, I'm like, that's really his bass line that he does? He doesn't do he switches it up every other time, and I didn't notice that in some of the boots that I was listening to, because it's so drowned out by both Stone and Mike and that heavy, heavy guitar presence that you have in the right and left ear, that you kind of, you're saying to yourself, where is the bass? And it's, you know, Matt will tell you that that's a good thing, because it's blending, and bass player, although he wants to hear the bass player a little more, the bass player is supposed to blend and sort of like the drummer and keep the rhythm. But, you know, it is nice to hear him a little bit, because I do like some bass heavy stuff. And yeah, you see that with Jeremy in this one, as we'll transition into this. You know, I think that, I know that Jeremy was not, this was before it broke out. So Pearl Jam is popular at this time, and we're still like, we're still gaining momentum, but we're not fully there yet, because Jeremy became a single in September of '92. So I believe
they're like right in the middle of the meteor
right
here.
Right.
I don't know if they've quote unquote reached the pinnacle yet. The highest point of popularity, which I guess would maybe be more like later '92 into '93. Right?
I would say like around
like,
Video Music Award time when
Right.
they debuted Animal is a really important one.
Exactly.
But I think Unplugged was another moment that really kind of elevated them to another level of success. But
and then Pinkpop, of course, which was a couple weeks before this show.
Right, yeah. Pinkpop is really, and we'll, as we're recording this, yesterday was the anniversary of Pinkpop, and I shared a couple things through social media and got a lot of great response, because how couldn't it? But what I was going to say is you can tell it's not a popular song yet, because the crowd at that beginning bass line intro, the crowd isn't like erupting. And at this time, you go a little later when Jeremy's a hit single and the music video is in heavy rotation, they play the song, and once that doom, 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 the crowd would explode right away, and you don't get that here.
No, right. And that, I think, again, just goes back to the song still gaining popularity.
Sure.
This was a 1,200-seat concert hall. It still exists, actually. It apparently opened in 1910.
Rock House.
Yes.
Is that how you say it? Rock House.
Volkshaus?
Is it Volkshaus or Volkshaus?
It's Volkshaus. Volkshaus?
Rock's House was the Vienna show that was after, because I saw them both next to each other. I'm like, fuck, I better remember which one this is. So, okay,
right.
Yeah,
so
you're right,
I mean,
Volkshaus.
and it is a concert hall, so I don't know if that means, I'm assuming that means that there's like seats, it's like for like orchestras.
It didn't sound like there
essentially.
were seats, because you get into later and he tells people, be careful. So
Yeah, I don't know. I'm
I
not
don't-
sure. Maybe they can move them. I don't know. I'm just looking at the Wikipedia page. It says that it's a venue with an auditorium filled with seats. I don't know.
For all of our
either
friends
way,
up in the Swiss Alps, please send us a note and let us know what this venue is all about, and
right.
and who's been playing there recently. I'd love to know.
Yes.
Another reason why you can tell that this version's really early, nobody repeats the "fuck" line back to Ed.
Yep. Very true.
And really, like, the best thing about pre-Vitalogy versions of this, and maybe a little bit after Vitalogy too, is that just like Ed taps into his anger in that second verse when he gets to, and the boy was nothing that mommy couldn't bear, like,
Right,
and he screams that whole part, and that's that sign of the times. And now he'll just he'll sing that part, and that daddy didn't give attention. It's awesome. It's so cool because it's so different, and you can tell that A, they're having fun, and B, they want to they do mess around and do something different. They don't want to play song after song every night and just sound stagnant. So he just taps into just another side of him that everybody loves at this time.
There is there is nothing better than early angry Eddie.
Really is.
From the screams, just the energy, just that anger. I mean, it just it doesn't get any better than that. Honestly, it's as good as it gets for any singer. And Jeremy, obviously, I know I would say that there's a good amount of Pearl Jam fans that don't like Jeremy at this point, for whatever reason. I went through a phase where I kind of didn't like it, and now the more I listen to it, and even like current versions, I enjoy it. I do. Love the singing at the end. It's always fun.
There's a good scream to finish this off too. So
exactly.
that's sort of the first good one, I would say.
Definitely.
And then State of Love and Trust, that beginning one. I mean, there's so many classic versions of this song where in the beginning you hear that, wah! It's, we've covered it so often lately, and we've covered, the now version again. It doesn't have that, like, just kind of pacing itself style. It's just kind of a 2-minute song. This was 4 minutes that iTunes has this version at 347, I believe, and their versions, I think they could get through it in maybe less than 3 minutes live sometimes, and it's just everybody's gonna love it. Everybody loves it in its spot, but man, you hear it like this, and it's sort of a breath of fresh air, you know.
I think one of the things with just these early shows in general, and I said it earlier, it's just like there's less songs. You know what I mean? Like, they don't have as many songs to play. So this is not a situation where, and this is more, I guess, from like the podcast perspective, you know, there's really not a lot to critique as far as song placement. You know what I mean?
Not really,
because there's not, the pickings are slim anyway. So it's pretty much going to be some combination of 10 and a couple of covers, or, you know, State of Love and Trust and, you know, Breath or Wash, that are in Footsteps that you're gonna get, you know, so songs that were from this era that were not on 10.
Sure,
but the
Alone
only
is
one,
in there.
or sure, Alone. I think the only song from 10, if my math and just my knowledge is correct here, is Release is the only one that's not played at this show.
As far as I can think off the top of my head,
yeah. Just looking at it, I'm almost positive. So, you know, you're gonna get the entire album essentially is what happens. This was about an hour and a half show, which at this point in their career is a lot of time. Yeah, that's a long show. I mean, it's 18. It's listed on the track listing as 18 songs. Granted, and then we're gonna, as we go along, we'll get into these. There's a couple little jam / improv things going on.
Yeah, it's not necessarily all Pearl Jam stuff. But,
that are short, but you know, this is a considerably long show, I think, for this point in their history.
I would say
which is interesting.
Yeah, I would say so. Usually they're probably getting about an hour. They're probably getting maybe 13 if they're lucky, 14 songs in, maybe 14 if there's an encore. But yeah, like this to me is kind of the early start of, okay, we're here to perform. We're here to be on stage for as long as we can be. If we have to break a curfew, so be it sometimes. You know, this is sort of a teaser of what would be to come in the next handful of years. So I think that's why this was such a popular bootleg to a lot of people when it circulated. And it was a little late to circulate, which I found out from our friend and patron Patrick Bogle, who I was talking to about this before, that it really, people knew about this, but really it was circulating around 2000 was when the show started circulating and everybody kind of got their hands on it. And really, if you go out archive.org and search for it, you can download the boot for free, and it's
very good quality.
It's awesome quality for 1992. I mean, you don't get much better.
It doesn't
than
get
that
any
at
better.
all.
Yeah, and that's interesting. Just bringing up the bootleg as a bootleg. If you go to the YouTube video for this show, there's no actual video, but it's just the bootleg audio on in video form. If you look in the comments section, there's a lot of people that say, "Oh my God, I remember, driving and paying like $20-$25.
Oh yeah, we get those stories all the time. Yeah,
get my hands on this bootleg, and it's so crazy. It feels like yesterday. Like I was just trying to go get it, and here it is. Thanks for uploading, whatever." Is just, I guess that's just a testament to the show itself. And what I've noticed, and this is just something particular to me. Maybe you know what I'm talking about. Like all of these like secondhand bootlegs, it's like a mishmash of like all of these different recordings from different shows that are like combined.
We've talked about this before,
Yeah, so it's like, they're bootleg compilations almost. They people, I guess, like handpicking performances from different bootlegs and combining them into one bigger, larger bootleg, and then that bootleg has its own particular weird name because it's not specific to one show.
Right.
I have in my iTunes, I don't know what exactly it's called, but I guess what I'm trying to say is this bootleg is popular enough that a number of the performances from this show are on multiple of those bootleg compilations. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Do you see what I'm saying?
I know exactly what you're saying, because there's actually one of those websites out there, the Sky I Scrape or one of those other ones. They came up with like the ultimate catalog of every song that they've ever performed and what the best version of it is. So it's kind of like they came up with their own CDs, and the reason why we picked the show was because there were a ton of versions of songs from the show that were on that album.
Yes.
So
yes, exactly. So I guess what I'm trying to say is if a number of these performances are on a number of those kinds of bootlegs, you know that it was widely circulated and a popular boot at the time, and still is.
Absolutely. So. Let's transition here into, we said that they were going to jam and do some improvs, and this is the first one of about 3 or 4 that they do tonight. We're not going to play all of them, but we'll play some. I think this one is a good one to play. Yeah, I do too. I think this is one of the better ones. It's kind of dubbed "Love You, Hate You." I don't really know the history behind it. If this is something that they've done a couple of times with these lyrics, but why don't you listen and just check it out and just kind of see how they jammed at the time.
Said I'd be alright. Oh, everything that I believed, it wasn't true. I found it out when I got close to you. I thought you were different, like a dream. Things ain't never what they seem. Thought I could trust you with my soul, but you can't do that anymore. The doctor said I'd be alright, but I still feel blue. Doctor said I'd be alright, but I still love you, hate you, love you, want you, hate you. Yeah.
So we were kind of talking about this earlier. Improvs back then.
Much more common than now.
Of course, because, they have to fill some time, and it's just sort of, it's probably not in the set list to do this. It's probably just kind of, whether there's a guitar change or something like that, somebody noodles, and it kind of sounds like it's Mike that's noodling a little bit. Or is it Stone? I'm not sure who's in what ear for this show at points, but it does sound like it's a little noodling, and then Ed just kind of goes in. It's showing some of his aggression, but it's honed back a little bit while being a little bit therapeutic. I don't know. I don't remember the lyrics verbatim of this, but it's sort of got that "love you, hate you" edge to it. I don't know if you can explain that further, because I listened to it a couple of times and I couldn't grasp what the lyrics were, but it was pretty typical of the early 90s Ed. It's stuff that you would hear back then. Yeah,
I think the biggest takeaway from not just this improv, but improvs in general is what I said before. It's just that they were actually doing them. I think that they're a lot less common now. I mean, way. I mean, they really don't even do this anymore.
Yeah, if they are common now, they feel rehearsed. It's not jams. It's,
sure.
You can call it improv. I know that they did one at the Memphis show that I was at, and it felt a little more, it had that Untitled vibe to it.
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know if it comes out of, given that they probably had less, roadies back then, like people like help, like the crew, like
sure.
Maybe there's less people, and Stone and Mike and Jeff are trying to like transition their guitars, and maybe Dave A just starts playing, a little drum beat.
Yeah,
and then it's just like they all kind of join in before the next song starts.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's really organic. Like it's just like spur of the moment. Dave will just start playing something, and then Jeff jumps in, and then Mike and Stone jump in, and then Eddie feels like, oh, let me just make up, stream of consciousness, just kind of say whatever comes into my mind.
And he's good at it, too.
Yeah, he is. And that's, again, just another example of just, the kind of lyricist and songwriter that he is. And I think, the all of the improvs here are great. I think they're really interesting. I think a lot of them are centered in, from an activism, social activism, political standpoint. A lot of the time Ed's talking about, basically change the world, or, it's like it has to do with love, and, there's a message there. I think he's not just making words up for the sake of, in the same sense as Yellow Ledbetter is just made up differently every time. It's like he's actually trying to say something. There is a message in there's meaning to his words for what he's saying.
Absolutely. And, one of the big improvs jams that everybody knows that actually, kind of turned into a thing that turned into a song was Out of My Mind. That was never something that was rehearsed. It just kind of came out of the blue one day, and the band kind of jammed on it, and it, all of a sudden it's a B-side off of the Not For You single, and it showed back up at Fenway this past year. So, it's it's got a cool little legacy to it. So sometimes you can get sort of that sort of thing out of these improvs. So that takes us into Black here. And it's funny, while most of the songs from this era, Alive, Even Flow, the Porch and the popular ones at the time, were in about 120 plays. Black was only at 86. And I think I'll chalk it up to that, if they're playing a lot of opening acts, if they're doing a lot of openers at the time, because that's half of what 1991 and maybe a little bit of 1992 was, some festivals here and there, maybe they leave Black off because it's just not... They want to hit the crowd home with the harder stuff, and but also you listen to stuff like Drop in the Park, and he said on the Drop in the Park show, this is one that we don't do too often.
That's right. He goes, we stopped playing this song for a really long time because it's just really hard to sing it.
Of course.
And then they go into it. I think you hit the nail on the head. I think at this point they're opening for a lot of bands, or, they are in this mode where they're constantly trying to play at, in a very aggressive style. Black is a much more, I don't want to say depressing, but it stands out, and it's very different than most of the songs of this early era. Very emotional. It's just the kind of song where if you play this song, you're really changing especially, and it really stands out even more in these shorter sets because there's less songs and less time. You're really changing the pace of the concert. These days, today, they whip this out, everybody knows it, everybody loves it, Mike solos for 10 minutes, and everyone wants to sing the songs together. At this point, it's not the kind of song that it didn't have that same kind of meaning then as it does now. If that makes sense.
100%. It was just kind of, I think it was just another song off 10 at the time, because everybody they wanted the angsty stuff. They wanted Even Flow and Alive and Deep, and the stuff that really, they can mosh to, they can party to and just enjoy. And Black was just sort of, I guess at this point, because I think that, compared to everything else, it was a little pedestrian compared to, it's tough to compare it to other Blacks, but it didn't have that, he wasn't tapping into that emotion that he usually does with Black. It just kind of felt like it was cooling off from a couple of really hard and fast songs and getting you ready for, a part of the set that's really going to hit home pretty hard.
Yeah, I think the ending of Black a lot of the times is where you can put a lot of stock in saying, oh, that's a good version, or that's just a pretty, pedestrian, normal version. I always look at the end, and if if Ed's going crazy, and he does do the wee, you know, he actually
Right.
sounds like a pig, actually. This one, I have to say, if you listen to the bootleg, he's like, wee. You know, We Belong Together, and Mike goes crazy, and it was a little short. You know, they cut it a little short.
Yeah.
It wasn't quite as drawn out as they, you know, like I said, like these days they really draw it out. But even other versions from this era that are a little more, I don't know. It's just, like you said, he does kind of hold back a little bit, I think, at times, and it's just, there are better versions. And Alyssa Black is probably my top 5 songs as well. But it's just fine. You know, it's good. It's solid. It's not great. It's not horrible. It's kind of just middle of the road for me.
But for everything that we just said and what kind of crowd that we're expecting this to be, it gets a massive reaction afterwards. The whole crowd is up in arms. They love it.
Yeah.
I thought it got a huge reaction.
It did, and it's still a song that should get a reaction. I mean, obviously, I think any songs you're going to get a reaction, but I guess, like I said, it's just so different than all the other songs. I guess maybe that's part of why people start to like the song, because it is different in that sense.
Sure.
Like from an energy standpoint, and you know, Eddie still lets it, you know, belts it out, and Mike's, you know, doing his soloing, and you know, still worthy of a strong reaction. I'm talking in the context of more, you know, comparing just Black to other performances of Black from this era.
Right.
You'll hear better. That's all I'm saying. So
absolutely, yeah. Like, this song is going to get deeper into meaning, and I don't think a lot of people really knew what this song was about until Unplugged, until he wrote Pro-Choice on his arm. So, you know, he's trying to hold back a little bit, because I think that those wounds are still fresh in his mind when this song is very early in the stages. And I think he's not ready to open up just yet. And so...
Yeah, that's a good point. That's another angle of it, I think, for, you know, the meaning to Eddie and that actual emotional factor is something important to keep in mind. Yeah, for sure.
So now we get into the point of the set, which we teed and talked about for a little while here. Ed asks anybody if they speak English, because he wants to tell a little story for you. The next 3 songs we've never played together, but they go together. That was false. They played it the night before, as we had mentioned. It's all one story. I've never told people before, and I don't want to ruin the interpretations of the songs that you have, but it's about incest, murder, and all these good things, and the 3rd song takes place in a jail cell, so it's your own little mini opera. And, of course, as we mentioned before, it's going to start with Alive, so that's how we're going to start. We're going to start with Alive, and then we might just go back to back to back here and tee them up and play them. So let's do that. We'll start with Alive, we'll come back real quick, and we'll give you everything else.
If I got a little story for
obviously the next up in the trilogy is Once, but before Once we kind of get another improv, a little jam a little bit, and dub it I'm Not Crazy if you want, because it's a good transition in between Alive and Once, and we're going to kind of play how that transitions into Once. So again, we'll kind of save everything for the end here, so listen to how that transitions into the song, and it's the second in the Mamasan.
What you did to me ain't right. What you did to me ain't right. Don't blame me, problem child, 'cause I ain't crazy. I ain't crazy. Yeah. Nothing wrong my life. It's you're not directly responsible. Once upon a time.
Finally, Act 3 here is Footsteps. This is the finish of the trilogy, and Footsteps isn't really well known at the time. This is only the 5th time that they're ever playing this song, and it was on the Jeremy single, which is released September 27th, so I would say that not a lot of people really know what this is yet, so pretty rare that they're doing this, and pretty rare to hear at the time. So we're gonna finish off the Mamasan with a very, very early version of Footsteps, and if you recognize that something is not there, you're not going crazy, it's because something is not there.
So this is Act 3. About reaching me, I won't be home. Don't even think about stopping by. Don't think of me at all. There was a reason, it was.
So that was all 3 of the Mamasan trilogy Alive, and then we have a little intro going into Once, and then Footsteps. So where do you want to start here? I guess we got to start at the top, right?
Yeah, I think we really went in depth on this before, just about the the meaning and the actual storyline in the trilogy. I think I guess I'm getting a little ahead of myself. So first, I'll just say Alive, awesome. Any of these early versions of Alive, you're gonna as I've said a million times, you're gonna get a ton of energy, and Alive is the perfect example of a song that brings the energy. Just that anthemic, huge sound for them in this early part of their career
It's an arena rock song and a club show.
Exactly. So anyone that was able to see any of these early performances of Alive, or just the band in general, obviously you're lucky, but Alive, again, is just that song where I think everybody really, it's just like an emotional high point, for a show, especially in the early going. I mean, there's a reason they play it toward the end of shows now, if, not second to last at shows these days. There's a reason for it. It's because it is anthemic and people want to scream, yeah, at the end. And that's, I love that. Love the yeah, like the, the every like couple second Eddie screaming yeah at the end, while Mike is soloing. And I always think back to like that Pinkpop performance, and he's kind of just like bouncing up and down, looking at the crowd and giving everybody the yeah. You can you feel it, like you just feel how powerful what's going on here is, and that song is just it's like it says, it really makes you feel alive. What I was going to say is I just think I'm kind of like thinking about it now in the context of the Mamasan Trilogy, not just as a standalone song, but this little improv, the I'm Not Crazy. Musically, if you listen, it actually sounds like a siren. Say? It sounds like a siren. So,
you know what I said it sounded like?
Like what?
The beginning of I Am the Walrus.
Yeah, a little bit, but it's just like when.
Right.
It sounds like an ambulance or like a police car siren, which is perfect in the context of the trilogy, because Once is now about the guy going on a killing spree.
Sure, yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like he's almost being like followed around by the cops or something. He's like in the middle of like a police chase or something, running away from the law. So it's actually I don't know if it's Mike or Stone. I couldn't tell.
I think it's probably Stone.
I think it's probably
Stone
as
loves
well.
The siren kind of stuff.
Right. So he starts playing this while Eddie, is kind of in the character of the Mamasan Trilogy, the man, saying, I'm not crazy, I'm no crazy, whatever. Like
what you did to me ain't right. He's still blaming the mother here.
I'm actually looking on 2 Feet Thick here. They kind of give a little blurb about the show. It says, Alive is played, second song of the trilogy. Once has a lead-in, What You Did to Me Ain't Right, Problem Child, Because I Ain't Crazy, Once Upon a Time, and then they tear into Once. I just think that that's so cool. That little like siren-sounding improv with the I'm Not Crazy. It's like they're really playing like a mini opera. It's like he's playing the character he wrote, which is really cool. I mean, how often do you really do you get the trilogy 3 in a row with this little improv thrown in to kind of add a little color to it, a little flair to the trilogy and in the bigger picture, and then Ed actually giving you the improv of, I'm Not Crazy, like he's actually playing the guy. It's just really, really cool. Once is just, they blaze through it. It's just so angry and just so awesome. And then Footsteps. I know you said that you are not a huge fan of the early Footsteps, the sound at least. I enjoy it. I actually think it's really cool. I know the harmonica's missing, and that's what you're trying to say here.
Yeah, that's obviously my favorite part about the song is just how impactful the harmonica is. But also, you have the early 90s kind of like that delay twang, and it's bluesy, borderline country. It's like, I don't know. It's not the Footsteps that I have grown to really appreciate and absolutely adore. It's taking the steps to get to that.
The Footsteps.
But yes, thank you. I feel like I'm thinking a different thing than what I wrote, because I thought it sounded really tight when I wrote it, but now I'm like, I guess outside of listening to it, I was kind of like, I don't know if I like the country vibe to it. I don't know if I liked it twangy. I feel like I like it better now. It's kind of like how Matt said with the Immortality that we covered from the Orpheum show, that it grew to be much better than it was then, but okay. I can still see its importance,
Yeah, I'm a big fan of Footsteps as a song in general. I enjoy current versions of the song, but I have to say I really, really enjoy these old versions. And this particular performance of Footsteps where he goes, so this is Act 3, right before they start playing it. This is another example of a song, a performance, I should say, of a song from this concert that is on a lot of those bootleg compilation albums. I definitely have had this song on multiple of those compilation bootleg things that we were talking about earlier. And I guess part of that is because it is part of the trilogy. You know, it's a unique performance,
and you
era.
weren't getting this. Yeah, you weren't getting this a lot at the time.
Not common at all.
As we mentioned earlier, this is the total times that the trilogy has been played has been 5, and it was the night before this in Milan. It was then this show, and this was really. Everybody goes back to this show as being the one because this is the one where he kind of interpreted it as a mini rock opera. And he didn't say anything like that in Milan. He just played 3 songs in a row. And then the next 2 nights, Vienna, Paris, they do the same thing, and they don't bring it back until another night in Seattle in 1993. So, and since then, surprisingly, with all, the Man trilogy and all other things that they've done that are kind of like that, they've never brought this back, which, for shows like PJ20 or anniversary shows, I'm really shocked that they've never done these back to back to back again.
Yeah, it's an interesting point. Did you say when the last time they did it was?
1993 in Seattle.
Seriously? So they did it 5 times and they haven't done it in 26 years. So
they've played the songs in the same set, but that's not in
the same
nothing.
Order.
No,
right. Yeah, I don't know, man. That's weird. I maybe just for a lack of a better answer, maybe it just doesn't have the same weight behind it, to them, it doesn't matter as much to them anymore.
I think it is such a pivotal story in the band's legacy.
Yeah, and they're so big on doing things like that.
Of course,
playing songs for certain reasons.
Going back to Crown of Thorns because of Andy,
the Man trilogy, like you said. Course. It is weird. It's unlike them to not do this for 26 years.
But you know what? All in all, again, I wrote how it's very tight, and I said how it's very
awesome.
tight. For a song that they've only played 5 times, and they probably haven't really touched since when they were doing the demo, it does sound incredible.
It does.
It really does. Whether or not I like the twangy country bluesy vibe, I can take it or leave it. But you know what? I can enjoy when they put together, the whole band comes together and makes it sound good. So, all right. Ed says at the end of this, the end. And the crowd is very appreciative, even if they have no idea what kind of history they've just been seeing. This was really the first time that people really understood what the Mamasan was all about. And I'm sure that there were people on the inside that kind of knew about the story, that maybe they said it in an interview and they were, not everybody has the access to everything nowadays, but nowadays, I should say. But this was really the first time that people kind of had an understanding for how the band, and maybe not even, because he doesn't say that this was the first thing that they had ever written, but at least that why these songs kind of go together. So, and that takes us into Deep, and I don't have too much on this besides it is as demented and wild as I like it, but it needed one thing. It needed more Dave. This was the song that I
said you're talking about, yeah.
Yeah. There's a version, the Atlanta version, I'll always go back to that version, where you just hear that double bass.
Are you talking about 94? Fox
before the Christmas Clean Love part where you hear that.
Yeah.
And I go back to that, and it just sounds, in comparison, I know I'm sure since then, before that Atlanta show, they had played around with it a lot more, and he had made it stand out a lot more, but here it sounds very, very basic, and I really want that edge to it with Dave.
I know exactly what you're talking about. That performance of Deep from the Atlanta... I mean, that Atlanta 94 show was arguably my favorite bootleg of all time.
Yeah, it's up there. It's really up there.
But that particular performance of Deep is extremely good. I mean, anytime... I just love when Ed does the script, like in the beginning, like before leading into the actual, the guitar. I mean, if that doesn't get you going, I mean, I don't know what else to tell you. I mean, it's just that good. I mean, just his screaming and yeah, the drumming might have been a little bit uncharacteristic of Dave A, I guess, in this performance, but it's still good. It's still a good performance. You can't go wrong with it. I don't really have anything else to add other than, like I said, I'm just such a huge fan of these early Eddie screamy, yelling kind of songs and little tidbits that he throws into songs that otherwise don't even have screams, like in the studio recordings. That is a great example. Deep on 10 doesn't have the screaming in the beginning, but then in all these live performances, he's always throwing in that scream, and I love it. Love it. Just love it.
And then at the end here, the whole song becomes kind of a complete shit show at the end. It's kind of like how
it's in a good way, though. In a good way, they're doing it on purpose. I know what you're talking about because
you know the end of War Pigs, how War Pigs ends. That it's sort of like a fast forward or a rewind sound. It kind of has that vibe to it.
Yes, they're definitely doing it on purpose, and it's funny that I actually forgot about that until you just said it. They are. On purpose, they're going out of tune, essentially. Like, they're playing the wrong notes that are in a different key than the rest of the song to give it that feeling of, chaos.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So, and then they end on the one clean chord at the end to wrap up the song.
And it's kind of fitting because while this chaos is going on, Ed is yelling out to the crowd, be gentle, you fuck.
Right.
And that's where I'm saying.
Which is the complete opposite of what the song is by its nature. It's just total anger and just, fury and chaos, like we said. So that's pretty funny.
Although Ed can be so angry and tap into this character at some point, he's still concerned for everybody.
He's constantly torn and going back and forth. You're absolutely right.
Yep. So after that, he says, our government, our parents, our teachers, our friends all put leashes on us. Drop the leash, get out of my fucking face. I think this is the high point of the show for me, and we have to play it because it sounds really, really, really fucking good. So
and another stream going into it too, so get ready for that.
Yeah, so 3, 2, 1, and we'll hit leash.
Does it get any better than that?
I don't think so. My first sentence was, this could be the best version of Leash I've ever heard.
I don't know what other show I would think of that would be better. The only one that's
Pinkpop is good, but
Pinkpop is good, but it's definitely not as good as this version. The other one that I was going to think of or going to say was, do you know that More Theater bootleg from 1992,
yes.
January 17th, I think it is, of 92. Doesn't that show have Leash on it?
I want to say it does. Yeah.
I think it does. For all we know, that could have been the first time they ever played it. You know what? Now I'm curious. Now I'm going to look it up really quick.
I can do the stat check. I'll talk over it while you stat check. How about that?
Okay, go ahead.
So it's just, the band is spot on the performance. It's full, energetic, passionate, angry angst. It has, everything that you want. This is why people say play Leash, you pussies, because they want it to sound exactly like this.
So that More Theater performance was the 7th performance of Leash. So they actually played it 6 times in 1991.
Wow. Okay, that's interesting. So it's like 2 years before the album came out. I knew that this was one of the earlier songs off of Versus. Probably one of the only ones that was written really before they went into the studio. But that is kind of cool that it sort of fits in more with 10 than with Versus.
Yeah,
almost.
I want to throw one more little tidbit in here. I'm looking at I'm on Live Footsteps, just looking at the actual numbers for Leash. It's actually, in the early days, a huge closer. They closed at one point from February 7th through February 26th of 1992. They closed 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So basically almost six shows in a row they closed with Leash.
Wow.
So it was clearly one of their go-to, big energy wrap-up kind of songs, and they're playing it here, 13th. So
yeah, this is how you get the crowd. They don't have a lot of songs left at this point, so how do you want the crowd to remember you? It's always how you finish. And Leash going into Porch is going to be, for a lot of people, what they remember about the show. And again, it's like most times where they play it nowadays, Ed's not as fiery on it. Jeff doesn't have that flea. He doesn't go out the full out flea on his bass line. It just sounds very funky in this. Mike just sounds otherworldly, and it's the Angry Team anthem.
I think it's actually Jeff screaming at the end, right, with Eddie? I think that's Jeff.
Is it?
Yeah, I think that is.
Okay, I didn't
It's
pick up on
definitely
that.
not Stone. If you listen, that's Jeff screaming. I'm pretty sure at the end. Drop the leash, drop the leash.
Yeah.
There's a couple times, like, they go through that little vocal line a couple times before Eddie kicks back in and does it like a little higher. He's like, drop the leash, they're kind of like harmonizing in a way. I think that's Jeff, actually, which is rare.
Interesting.
He's not really one of the big singers.
No, just for Lowlight, really.
Yeah.
I can't think of much else.
Exactly. So
and even Lowlight, he's a little off on.
Right. So that's a cool little element to this performance.
And we go from Leash and we get in between Leash and Porch.
Another improv jam. We won't play this one. We'll just talk about it. But what we will say is that it's the same one that we heard the first one, that boom, 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 but it's a little faster, and Dave kind of picks it up. Right. It's a little more funky. Think a little more Sweet Lou bass line, kind of. Yep.
But they're actually doing what you can call tags here. They're doing actual songs.
Yes.
Shower the People with Love Who You Love, or
it's James Taylor.
Yeah, the James Taylor song. That's kind of the basis of what this is the bread of, this is how they start and it's how they finish. And then they do a Pretender song called Brass in Pocket, which I don't know, so I didn't really grasp on to what he was doing and have any connection to it.
Yeah, same for me. I don't really have anything to add on to it other than, like you said, I got to be honest, I don't really know it.
Right.
I'm just going to refer to it again. I'm looking at this 2 Feet Thick listing for this show. It says that this song is a Pretender song with the lyrics revised a bit. Quote, I'll get the fuck out of you. I don't give a fuck.
Right.
So...
That sounds like 1992, Ed.
Yeah, I feel like that probably was not in the original Pretenders version of the song, but Ed takes the liberty of making a couple little changes.
And then there's one in the tag that's called Meaningless, and
that's him. That's an improv.
Live Footsteps. Yeah, okay, because when you click on it on Live Footsteps, it says cover, but it doesn't say who it's covered by, so it's just kind of, okay, that's the improv part. So, again, it's just a cool little jam that, it doesn't, it's just sort of entertaining, and you can kind of just see that the band is enjoying themselves and just seeing where it takes them. And even Ed at the end says, thanks for joining in, and we're just making all this shit up as we go along.
Yeah, that's like, I think that's exactly what he says. Like, he's like, we're just making it up as we go.
Yeah.
I think, the meaningless little jam there, little improv is cool. It's kind of like a motivational thing. He's, we're all meaningless. I can't believe that we're meaningless.
Right.
Kind of like a make a change in the world. You're important kind of a thing. Yeah, it just kind of falls in line, I guess, with all of these other little jammy improv things that they were doing back then, and a lot of the same lyrical, motivational kind of twists that he kind of leans toward in a lot of these situations. But yeah, it's cool. It's got a cool vibe. I enjoy it.
And then after having said all that, just one more thing that I need to say for the whole band. So I won't even say it. I'll just let it play.
There you go.
1, 2, 3, 4. What the fuck is this world? Running to you again. Leave a message, at least I could have learned your voice one last time. Daily my feel is good. Be my time by your woman. Would you hit me? Would you? Would you hit me?
God, my friend, this is how you play a porch.
Yes. Thank you.
Yeah, you were the one that really kicked it off, that really kind of inspired us to be like, Riffy Porch sucks. And we were like, you know what? It kind of does, because a few weeks after we had you on, where you said that, we had the Atlanta Porch, which is the best porch of all time in my eyes. And we're like, wait a minute, they can do it like this and make it sound like this. Why?
Right.
Why do they whisper now? Why do they have to, make it this elaborate thing? And Eddie's doing his solo shows this whole week and for the next month or so. And most of the times he's ending his first set with Porch, and hearing Porch as an acoustic version where he just does it, and you have that riffy version. No way. I'm definitely not into that.
Here's the thing. If the original version of Porch didn't exist, and you never knew that this was the way that they could play it, used to play it, however you want to put it, to then listen to the way they do it now, where it's just the riff and Eddie's playing it himself, you'd be like, okay, this is cool. It's just it's interesting, it's good.
Right,
but then when that this version
different
exists
universe,
and that they could play it in this manner, in this way, with this sort of tempo, it's like it's not even the same song. It's basically it doesn't even sound, like you said, in the same universe with these two different versions. I would take this every single time. Today, in their
do it a
couple
couple. Yeah, just do it a couple of times. They should be playing
it like this. I don't understand why Ed needs to play it himself.
It's kind of like, to me, it's like, how sometimes you get the Interstellar Overdrive intro in the corduroy?
Sure.
But not every single show.
Exactly.
Do it, splice it in sometimes. Sometimes when you feel, when you're ending a set and it just feels right, do it. But then sometimes when, you have a couple of songs in the set, I don't know, do the Evolution and Blood that come before it. Just go into the old-fashioned version, and I think it kind
Couldn't
of
agree more.
It would change the outlook of it, and people would be a lot less bored of it, because I feel like that is starting to become a piss break song. Because
100%.
It's Mike's solo in it isn't as unpredictable as it is on Even Flow. It's a little bit more structured.
Yeah, and that's the thing. It's they're still playing the song these days for 10, 11 minutes. This version of Porch is 11 minutes long.
Right.
And they always go into was it tearing, whatever it is, and Ed loves to go into that tag.
Yeah. And here you get Voodoo Child and War Pigs.
Right. Right.
So you don't get that nowadays.
And
not often.
And again, Dave A's drumming comes back in here into play with, when they get into this jam, the parts of where Eddie would go be climbing the rafters and falling into the crowd, the band is still playing, obviously. And that, to me, everything about these old performances is just so much better than the way they do it now. I don't know how else to say it. It's just like, and again, this is just my opinion. I would take this way of playing Porch every single time, without question, compared to today. I mean, I know they like to have fun.
Of the best
today.
things about the band,
right?
It just does,
right?
I think that in some point in the song, he's talking to the audience members, and I wonder if because at some point, you heard the crowd go into like this sudden burst of cheers.
Right,
like
so he must have
reaction.
He must have gone into the crowd. I'm assuming.
Yeah, stage dive or walked into the crowd
Fell off
or
or something.
Yeah, something must have happened. But there's no video evidence of anything, and unfortunately, the Five Horizons 2 Feet Thick doesn't have that recap. And the PJ20 book, which doesn't have an entry for Pinkpop, by the way,
which we didn't even say that before. That is just bizarre.
Yeah, I don't know what to even. I can just burn that book now. I can go Fahrenheit 451 on that puppy.
Totally weird.
Yeah, but I just again, it doesn't mention anything, so I don't know what he does here. But this is as classic as you can get.
It really is.
So
nothing else to add other than everything I just said in that. I mean, you want to talk about raw energy and just pure mayhem at an early Pearl Jam show. I mean, Porch is going to be your best example of that, with Eddie going into the crowd and, the guys going nuts on stage and Dave doing his insane double bass fills and, just off the charts. It's just them jamming and being as loud as humanly possible. And then you always get it, you're going to get that, hey, build up into the final chorus there before the song ends. It's just, it doesn't get any better than that. So it's a perfect early performance of Porch.
And that kind of brings us into the encore, which is a 2-song encore, technically 3, but technically 2, but maybe you can count it as 3. We'll talk about that. But the band leaves stage and the crowd is just begging for more and more, and you got like rugby or soccer kind of chants here. It's not the White Stripes, but it's close to that. It's like the early 90s version of what they do with Seven Nation Army. So
that's a good point. Yes, that's actually a very good point. And I actually, that's good.
Dave is hitting the bass drum along with it, and everybody's chanting the hey, 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 hey. This crowd is really, really
good crowd, and it comes through very well in the bootleg too. You really get that sense.
Absolutely. So that takes us into our final improv and jam of the night.
Suggestion.
Yeah, suggestion here. This they've done really good versions of this, and I think there are two that stick out in my head. Pinkpop sticks out because he reaches out to the crowd, and the whole crowd. He has the grasp of the crowd in his hands,
and Dave like doing the bass drum along with it. Yep.
Mm-hmm. It feels like he's in another stratosphere when he's doing that. It sounds like the first time they're really tapping into becoming rock stars instead of just being a band. And then the other one is Den Haag, where they kind of do a version of another Fugazi song called Saying No. And
yes.
The two sounding together, because Saying No has some really impactful lyrics. It's kind of a guy and a girl going back and forth. She says no, but he doesn't listen, or something along those lines. It's just the connection between those two songs is really good, but Ed is getting the crowd fired up, especially at the end. He says, this is the same song my dad used to sing when he used to beat me.
And then doesn't he say that and then go, hey, hey, hey?
Yep. It goes right into the
It's kind of funny, actually, yeah.
Yeah, so, but this is kind of a shorter version of Suggestion than we will hear in the future, because we haven't really touched upon doing a version of Suggestion yet.
Which, just to throw this out there really quick, because I'm looking at it on Live Footsteps. So obviously in 92 or 91 and 92, this was a heavy tag, tease, intro, whatever you want to call it. Ed used it all the time. The last one he used in 92 was August 25th at the Blockbuster Pavilion in Charlotte, North Carolina. Then they didn't do it again for 3 years until 1995 in Auckland, New Zealand as a tag. And then, interestingly enough, and this is actually really cool, as we're talking about Pinkpop, a minute ago in that version with Dave kind of, chugging along on the bass, the double bass, whatever. They didn't do it again until Pinkpop of last year. Of 2018. Right. So 23 years in between the last time they had done Suggestion, and the place that they did it again after all that time was where the most famous one is from, which is Pinkpop. So that's really cool. Which, again, it's just like we were saying before, it's like they're aware of these things, which is weird that they haven't done the Mamasan Trilogy, since 1990, whatever, 2 or 3, whatever it was you said in Seattle. They get it. Him wearing the Tivoli shirt again at Pinkpop. It's like they are aware of these things.
And the other thing, cool. The other song they did at Pinkpop was Pulled Up, the Talking Heads song.
Exactly.
That was, honestly, I think
and they're segued into each other.
Yeah,
it's Suggestion right into Pulled Up.
That whole part was fantastic. But they did, I think, one of the shows early last year, one of those South American shows, they did Pulled Up. So that was a throwback to kind of what they did at Pinkpop, but it might have been like a Lollapalooza or something like that.
Right. You just gotta love when they're aware of that kind of stuff. I just love that.
Of course. They, we do this because we're such history buffs with the band, and we kind of
totally not crazy at all.
No, not crazy at all.
I'm not crazy.
I'm not crazy. Once upon a time, but they know that we love it, and I think they kind of take that energy and they're like, wow, they've been so tapped into this and tapped into us that, we give them a little something back, for respecting the history.
They know how much everybody appreciates it, for sure.
Of course. So 2 songs left here. Garden here.
Love it.
Very interesting. We're gonna next week's show, I believe the way that it ends is parting ways into Ledbetter, and this is kind of in that same fashion where you're almost expecting them to just end crazy, to end hard, but that hey, and then you get that intro in the Garden, and the crowd kind of dies down a little bit, and there's sort of it feels like there's sort of a sway going on in the crowd a little bit, where it's just kind of, it's relaxed up until the end, I'll walk, and then it gets really tense and really, really hard. And
that's what I was talking about before with Ed doing his screams. I said, later in the set there was going to be a couple songs, particularly the ones I'm talking about were Deep, Leash, and Garden. The end of Garden, yeah. If you listen to that live, I feel like it doesn't really come through as much on the studio recording of 10. It does to a certain degree, but not nearly as much.
It's just so delayed. Everything sounds so delayed on it.
Just the strain and the rasp with which he sings those ending parts to Garden, it really shines through here, and he nails it. There are certain performances of Garden, especially now, where he doesn't let it rip because it's too hard for him to sing. So I get it. Not the case here. He lets it rip. Any version like this from years ago where Eddie's able to do that, I am a huge fan of. I love when he is on with his voice and can hit those high-pitched screams and notes that he, over time, has either lost the ability to hit altogether, which is just, part of aging. You can't knock him for it, or he just can't hit it every time, and he very rarely will try to do it.
He's also, you gotta know he doesn't have very good hearing, so he can't hear himself very well. So that's probably another reason for it, is that because he can't really hear himself, he can't really hear the rest of the band. It's all kind of muffled together, and I know there's speakers in front of him. I know he's probably got some earbuds in his ear or whatever, but he can't quite tap into that because he can't really hear himself sing as well as he used to. Just real quick, there was a lyric change instead of.
Oh yes, I don't question.
Yeah. I just question our president George Bush, which again,
sign of the times.
If you need proof that the band was always politically inclined and has never changed,
thank you.
There you go.
Yes.
There you go.
Thank you.
So, man, then we closed the show out with this pretty early version of this. I mean, they had been doing this a lot in '91 and into '92, but this is just awesome. They closed the show with "Rockin' in the Free World," and the way that they intro it, heavy drums, and
best.
Ed is singing before they get into the actual dun 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 dun. You'll hear Ed is actually singing the verse. So we're gonna start off right in the beginning of all that and take you into that wild beginning into the song. So let's listen in.
Shuffling their feet, people sleeping in their shoes. There's a warning sign in the road. There's a lot of people saying we'd be better off dead. Don't feel like Satan, I am to them. So I try to poke it the way I can.
So differences between the way that this song sounds today and the way that this song sounds now. I feel like
everything.
Yeah, it's just it might just be as simple as just the difference between an arena rock song and a club song, or is it just that, you know, they can't tap into songs the way they used to tap into songs back then?
I think it's a little bit of both. I think.
Okay.
Well, let me just start off by saying, and I know we're both on the same page with this one. We both love this old style
Absolutely.
of Free World. This is
Absolutely.
And again, we keep going back to Pinkpop, but it's just, you know, it's a prime example. They're played in the same manner. This was the way that they played Free World for years when they first started playing, and I guess it starts to transition over maybe like 94, 5, I think. Maybe it was after Dave A was gone. You know, when when Jack Irons got there, they started to play
it's such a drum heavy song,
way.
right.
But these early versions of the song, where it's just the dun 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 with the chugging drums, and
right.
you know, and I always just think back to that Pinkpop
and
version.
All of a sudden, those cymbals come in, and it just like it drives, it really empowers, and it fucking it makes you go, you know?
Yeah, you can hear, and I'm assuming it's I think it's Stone. You know, he kind of just plays like the individual strings of the notes of the chords. So it's
right.
It's just an E. It's an E D C. So it's like he's playing like each string in the E chord, the D chord, and then the C chord individually. So it's got like this like effect on. I don't know if it's like a chorus or like a flanger, some sort of pedal that he's using. It gives it this kind of like warbly, like spacey kind of like shakiness feel to the notes as he's playing them, and it just, I don't know, it's just so cool. It's just so different than the way they do it now. I love it. It just builds up the anticipation. You can really hear Dave A like slowly but surely, like he's hitting harder and harder as they get closer to the whole band kicking in, and it's just the perfect example of a song where they're able to build energy, and then when it hits that point, you know, you flip the switch and they just explode.
Yeah.
It just kicks in so loud. Eddie doing the screaming and just the whole band kind of chimes in the background, doing the background vocals in the choruses and everything, and Mike shreds his ass off with the different solos, and he gets. And
they're
two of
not
them.
throwing tambourines out into the crowd either.
No,
this is intense.
Straightforward, intense aggression. Balls to the wall, like just going crazy. Performance, last song of the night. Ed's thanking everybody as they're all done. Thanking everybody for being there or whatever, and it's just such a good closer. And I get that they still play it now, and it's got he wants to go around and get the tambourines out, and everybody always comes on stage with them at this point, and it's kind of like almost like happier. It has like a happier vibe to it now, the way they play it.
This is pissed off.
This is angry. This is like when they're like peak like Bush political, like we just talked about in Garden.
Right.
He's not messing around. I mean, he's really, he's saying what he wants to say, and I think this song has like a social, connotation to it by its nature from Neil Young, but which is part of the reason why they play it. But they're not pulling any punches here. I mean, they're just throwing punches, I guess, in the crowd, with the instruments, obviously, but
the difference
again, just these early versions are just my favorite. I love the way they play it.
The difference, it can all boil down to that nowadays they'll sing and they'll be like, "Hey, everybody, keep on rocking in the free world. Have a good night." And back then, it's keep on rocking in the free world, you fuckers.
Yeah, that's right.
It's just like, and really, the lyrics are, you hit the nail on the head. It's social commentary. It's what the song is. What this country.
One more kid that'll never go to school. Never get to fall in love, never get a chance to be cool.
People sleeping in their shoes. It's what people don't recognize this country when everybody says how great this country is. They don't see the faults. They don't see the people that can't afford to live the luxuries that America has, not just promoted, but everybody has called this the land of the free, that you can have that life, but it's not available for everybody.
Yeah, and it's just great, just to throw one more thing in there. It's great that you bring that up, because he actually does, Eddie, go into a little bit of like his little improv lyrics in the middle, right before that, "We all 1,000 points of light," like right before that, he's saying, the United States, the US of A, ain't a free place, ain't got the right to choose, the right to vote, but, the US of A ain't a free place. And then he goes, "We're 1,000 points of light." So, just a further testament again to, it always cracks me up when people, like when the whole poster thing with, Missoula last year, it just cracks me up. People say that, keep your politics out of it, blah, blah. Dude, they've been political since the start. Like, if you are claiming to be a fan and you're gonna get mad, like, listen, it doesn't matter what your political belief is. It literally could not matter less. The point is, they've always been political. So for you to sit there and be mad or you're for showing what they believe in, you're kidding yourself. You haven't been. You just want to silence the entire time. Exactly. So and again, it has nothing to do if you're left, right, center, what. I don't care. It's just like to sit there and say, "Oh, they I don't care about your politics, whatever." Like, listen, you know what you're getting when you're a fan of them. You really do. So,
I told people who were mad at that poster that I just said, you know what, if you're mad about it, don't say like that somebody bombed the White House. Say like the kitchen went on fire or something like that. Like, don't make it as like this. It's this attack on America. You can paint a different picture of it. Oh well, unfortunately the kitchen went on fire and John Tester's in the air happens to be in the air on a mower or whatever, or a moped, whatever he was on, and ATV.
So I guess what I'm saying is that Free World, from a lyrical and activist standpoint, I guess, for the band is just another example of who they are and what you get when you're a fan. And musically, obviously, a great closer, like we talked about. So it's
absolutely
awesome. So
there we have it. That was the show.
Volkshaus.
We got this in 2 hours. Can you believe that shit? Now let's rate it. What overall? What'd you think?
I don't know, maybe like a 7.5. 7.5.
That's
to
fair.
8.
Yeah, I was kind of in between 7.5 and 8 because I don't think this is like the end all be all show of 1992
of this era, right?
I think it is important, so I will. I'll usually give the nod to a show if it has something completely different. And man, this might
stands out.
Leash stands out really, really well. Rockin' in a Free World stands out.
Three
and
improvs
the
and Mamasan. Yeah, Mamasan, 3 improvs, Leash being awesome, and the old Free World style. Also, Garden being second to last, I think, gets in a little boost in there.
Sure.
It was a little slow out of the gate, like we talked about. I think 7.5 to 8. Somewhere in that range is solid.
I'm just gonna go 8. I'm just gonna kind of give it that benefit of the doubt.
Sure.
Again, like Pinkpop is the end all be all for 1992, but this is important too. So glad we got to do it and glad we got to cover it. Next week, we announced it last week. The winner of the contest. This was an episode that was nominated by Jeff Collar, and it won St. Louis 2000. And let's just say that we're doing it because, in celebration of St. Louis, because they are the new Stanley Cup champions. But we'll do St. Louis 2000 next week. That'll be a fun little show. Bring us back to the binaural era. And that's all we got. Buckley.
All right.
Thanks for coming on, man.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me back again. We'll have to do another one.
We have a plan. We are obviously planning for you to come back on. Since day one, since before we even did the podcast, you've been begging to do this show.
Yes.
So one of the MSG shows,
first one.
Your first one. I think this is probably my favorite show that I've ever been to. The second night,
May 21st, 2010.
2010. But maybe we'll have you on for if whenever we do Indio as well.
Yes,
because I know you're a very big fan of that show.
I am.
All right.
Awesome. All right. Thanks, Randy and Matt. I know you'll hear this at some point. Let's go Mets.
That's right. All right, and that's all we got to say. So this is the end. We're here, but not for much longer. And although we may be parting ways, I miss you already. I miss you always. For Buckley, for Matt, who says hi, I'm sure, and for Zurich, Switzerland, everybody tuning in. Yes, Volkshaus and Winterthur. We say goodnight and see you next week for St. Louis 2000. Would you like to say the bye that Matt usually says?
Which is what?
He just goes, bye.
Oh.
Would you like to say that?
Sure. Bye.